Okay, we're up to Samech Ches Amid Beis. We're up to the Mishnah. We're a little bit behind. Says the Mishnah, Ha'omer Hayamatir b'Medina. As we know, the Omer matir the Chadash in the outside the Beis Hamikdash. Ushtei Alechem b'Mikdash. And the Shtei Alechem matir the Omer for the Kabbanis in the Beis Hamikdash. Emevi Menachos b'Kurim u'Minchas behema. Minchas behema means the Menachos that accompany behema. Minchas Esachim. Koydem la'Omer. Heavy puzzle. You shouldn't bring it before the Omer, right? If you do, it's puzzle. However, koydem shtei alechem lo yavi, because you didn't get the second mat there, but im yavi kosher. In other words, it appears like there's two matirim for the carbon, for the karbanis. The first one is the Omer, and the second one is the shtei lechem. So if you don't have any, meaning you brought it before the Omer, then it's puzzle. If, however, you have the first matter, you brought the carbon Omer, you just failed to bring the shtei lechem, and you brought from the chodosh before the shtei lechem, since you had the matter of the Omer, it would have been okay. It would have been b'diavad. It would have been okay. That's pshat. Yasser Rab Tarfim kakashalei. Ma ben koydem lo'Omer lekoydem shtei lechem. Right? What's the difference between before the Omer and before the shtei lechem? So I'm the fun of Yehuda bar Nechemya. It says again. Notice the person doesn't call him Rabbi. It says Yehuda bar Nechemya. Loyim amid koydem lo'Omer shekain lut loychutem mechlaloi etzel hedyet. You want to know the difference between before the Omer and before the shtei lechem? In either case, why Reb Tarfon wants to know why is b'diavad kasha? He goes because after the Omer, right? Before the Omer, it wasn't nothing was mutter. Even the hedyet couldn't go ahead. Why will you say by the reason why it's mutter, it's kosher, is because at least before the shtei lechem, it's mutter lehedyet. In other words, it's mutter for somebody. Shosig Reb Tarfon. Reb Tarfon was quiet, and it seems that savu panov shel. Now notice, guys, you see that vav? See that vav? Rebbe Nimchak. You take out the word Rebbe. They don't want to. The Gemara does not want to give this person the title of Rebbe. Again, this is talking about the Bnei Tanoim. Reb Tarfon was a Tana. So Savu Panav Shal Yehuda ben Nechemya. His face was shining. He was besimcha. Now, Haseless, the simcha wasn't that he told the pshat. The simcha is that he upped Reb Tarfon, guys. The simcha is that he one-upped Reb Tarfon. Okay. Amar Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva said to him, Yehuda, Savu Panecha Shashafta Sazakein Timhani Im Tarich Yamim. I'm wondering if your days are going to be long. That's what Rabbi Akiva said. Now, as you went ahead and you were Paigeya in the cover of Tarfin, I'm wondering if your days are going to be long. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Loi Oisei Perek Prasa Pesachaya. That was 2 weeks before Pesach when this conversation took place between Reb Tarfon and Yehuda bar Nechemya. Kishalisi Latzeres, says Reb Yehuda bar Rabbi Loi, when I went up on Shavuos, Sha'alti Achro of Yehuda ben Nechemya. I asked about Yehuda ben Nechemya. Heichen who? Where was he? V'amuli said Nifta v'halachlei. He was told that what? He's no longer in this world. Right? Okay, no longer here. Amr Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. The Divrei Yehuda ben Nechemya, the Sachim Bikurim Shekrivim Koidim LaOmer Ksherim. According, in other words, guys, Yayin, is it mutter before what? It's mutter before the Omer. In other words, according to Rav Nechemya, that depends upon whether it's mutter for the hedyot or not. So in the Sachim and Bikurim for Yayin, that it went ahead and it got ripe already before the Omer, and you went ahead and you use them as nesachim, right? It would be okay. It would be okay because after all, the head you can drink the wine, guys, right? Look at Rashi. The divrei, he has the gifts of Rebbe. The divrei Yehuda ben Nechemya, the tali taima b'hoyel, since it's mutter for the hedyot, umutarm lehedyot, hani nami mutarm lehedyot, kaidam la'omer. The omer ain't aser ela min dagan v'lo yayin. It only asks min dagan, not yayin. V'adik tani meslisan heavy puzzle. Lava bikurim the Paris. It's not going to bikurim of Paris. Ha'ilan koy. It's not going what? You don't need the oimer mata the bikurim the Paris. So therefore, according to him, that you bikurim the yakrivim koydim oimer ksherim. Says no pshita. What's the chiddush? Ma the tema hasam hu the hutam mechlali etzel hedyet Abul hacha delay chut mechaloi loi. Kemash v'lo and kol shekain. It's a kol shekain, right? Madach, one that was asa and became muta, certainly something that was never asa. Guys, madach grain, the chadash was asa, now became muta. So the kol shekain, the bikurim, the fruit which was never asa, certainly you should be able to go ahead and bring. It's a cloud. Seder hanatza. Okay, we have Avrami Weiner. Okay, so you look at the parentheses in Samech Gimel, Samech Gimel, Samech Ches, Seder Hanatza Gale Pill, Seder blooming and feces of an elephant. How's that for a simon? Hey, you wanted a blog? You got a blog. Okay, anyway. Boy Rami Barchama. Guys, a series of shilas from Rami Barchama, and the simon is Seder Hanatza Gale Pill simon. Interesting thing. Boy Rami Barchama. Shtei alechem mahu sheyatiru shaloi kesidron. Kedishtei alechem bimata shaloi kesidron. What does that mean? You can see something here. You can see a chart. Yeah. Let me make it a little bigger. I don't want this chart. See this chart?
Can you make it darker, if anybody any chance? No, you
I'm
can't.
sorry, Harold. I 1 second. Let me try to do something. Let me stop it. Stop the share. Let's get rid of this. Let's get rid of this. Okay. Can you see anything now?
No,
You don't see anything.
nothing.
Not yet. Nothing.
Okay. So let's see. Let's see. You can do this now. See something now?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry it's not darker, but here. Shaloi keseda means this. Yishtei lechem. Okay. Yishtei lechem oimer. You planted over here. If you planted, it's better over here. You had the oimer, you bought the oimer already. You bought the oimer. And after the oimer, you planted and it took root. So this, you're going to need the next oimer to go ahead and matter it, right? You're going to need the next oimer to matter it. Shtei lechem passes, yes? And now, the oimer passes. Can you bring this before the next shtei lechem? Can you, in the oimer, if you can use this plant before the next shtei lechem? You know, here it's shloike seder, fellas, right? Usually it's oimer shtei lechem. You planted it after the oimer. So you have shtei lechem 1, oimer is 2. Now it's not keseder. Can I bring this before the next shtei lechem is the carbon? That's the shaila. Did that make any sense? Was that clear? Was that clear? Or a little crazy? Okay? In other words, usually here's the order. Oimer, shtei lechem, bring for the carbon. Over here, after the oimer, you have over here. So it's shtei lechem, next year's oimer. Can I use that was this before the next shtei lechem? That's the shaila. Good. So now, says the Gemara. And hechi dami, the Gemara fears ice. Hechi dami going to zarinu beino oimer l'shtei lechem. You planted plant A between the oimer and the shtei lechem. V'cholaf alay shtei lechem v'oimer. And you passed by the next shtei lechem right afterwards, and then the oimer. My kisidron sharia, you need kiseder, and you'd only be able to use it after the second shtei lechem, or shloi kisidron lo sharia, or not. In other words, or not. Dilma shloi kisidron nami sharia. So that's the shaila. So would you be able to use a plant that was after the oimer, before the shtei lechem, and you're going to use it before the next shtei lechem? Okay, that's the shaila. So now we're going to bring in brisa, and then we're going to bring in a little knech. Amar Rabba, Toshma, Vim Takav Minchas Bikurim, that's this week's Parsha, by the way, this past week's Parsha, Vayikra Beis, and Minchas Bikurim is the Omer. Vim Takav Minchas Bikurim, B'Minchas HaOmer Kosem Medaber. When it says Minchas Bikurim, we're speaking about the Omer. Mehechin Ba, where's it coming from? Minas Soirin. It comes from barley. After all, guys, the only mincha we know that comes from barley is the minchas kanois, is the minchas of a saita. Every other korban comes from chitim. So maybe I would say the minchas, it doesn't say openly, right, that you bring barley. So maybe that. Says Rabbi Eliezer Omer can't be. Nemar Aviv Mitzrayim. It says Aviv Mitzrayim. Remember that the earlier grain got gahak by the barad. It says Aviv Mitzrayim. V'nemar Aviv l'doiros. Mal Aviv Mitzrayim soirim. Af Aviv am l'doiros. Soirin. So Rabbi Eliezer says, it says Aviv, so Mamela, it says openly, it's not a svara, it says openly the word Aviv, and Aviv, we learn from Mitzrayim, means barley. Okay. Rabbi Kiva Omer, Matzinu Yachid Shemebi Chavasei Min Achitin. We find a Yachid brings his chay from Chitin. Guys, Vayikra Hey, Oilev Yoyrei, the very poor person, brings what? The Minchas Chayta, he brings from wheat. Right? This is the Chiyav, a Minchas Chayta from wheat. The Chayvasei Min Asoirin, and he brings the Chiyav from Soirin. This is speaking about an individual, that's the Minchas Chayta. V'tzibur Shemevi'im Chavasei Min Achitin. The tziba brings the chiyah from it's chiyah from chavitin. That's lechem. That's the shtei lechem. Mevin chavasim in asoirim, right? Should bring a chayv from tzoirim. Okay, so he brings the chiyah the oimer from tzoirim. Good, guys. So look, we have matched up. You have a yachid minchas chayta wheat, minchas kanayis barley. We have the tzibur, right? Shtei lechem wheat. Oimer barley. If you're going to say they're both wheat, then you're not going to have the matchup of what? Of tzibur and yachid. You're not going to have a choiv of a tzibur from barley. That's what, if you don't say that the oimer is from barley. Okay. So, what we need is the davar acher. What we need is the following. Davar acher, if you're going to say the oimer comes from chitin, ein shtei lechem bikurim. Shtei lechem won't be the first wheat carbon brought. Guys, in other words, if you're going to bring the oimer from chitin, the oimer is born in Tezayin Nisan. This is brought 50 days later. So it's not going to be bikurim. It's not going to be the first wheat brought. It's going to be the second wheat brought. Ellen must be that the oimer is from barley. Yes? It must be, you guys good? No? One more time. We want to know, we know the oimus from barley, but how do you know that? How do you know that? So Rabbi Eliezer says Aviv, Rabbi Akiva says a svara, and then he says a second svara. The first svara is just like you find chitim and sa'ar by yachid, you find chitim and sa'ar in sa'irin by what? And if you're going to tell me that sa'ar comes from wheat, that the oimer comes from wheat, you won't have sa'irin. The second thing is it says that it has to be, we call the shtei lechem bikurim. We call the shtei lechem bikurim. If you're telling me that the oimer is from wheat, then the shtei lechem won't be bikurim. It won't be the first wheat put on the mizbeach. It won't be the first. Good? That's now. We're leading up to a kasha. The kasha is going to be, if you hold shaloi kisidron works, I can create a scenario where you'll have the oimer from wheat, and you'll have the shvuas from wheat, and it'll be the first. It'll be the first of its crop. In other words, the first of its crop. You got it? So in other words, we're leading up to the question. If you said it could be shaloi kisidron, this last svara of Rabbi Akiva, that it won't be bikurim, is not true. What's the scenario? Let's see. I'm going to put it on the board before we see it inside. Okay? Let's do it on the big screen before we do it inside. Okay, year one. Guys, you see year one where my pointer is? Year one, it says Omer, right? ER, you plant A. Plant A takes root before the Shtei Lechem. Good? Then in Tammuz, after the Shtei Lechem, you plant B. Good? Both A and B need Omer to pass to be used, correct? Both A and B need the Omer. You need the Omer what? To pass before it's used. Good? Now, comes the Omer year two, right? Can I use plant A over here? Shleika Sidron. It should work. I'll use plant A as the Omer, yes, and I'll use plant B as for the Shtei Lechem. So this will be the wheat, and this will be wheat, and it works. Plant A will be the bikurim of this, and plant B, right? Plant B will be the bikurim for this. If you say Shleika Sidron. If you don't say Shleika Sidron, right, then you won't be able to use it. What? You won't be able to use plant A for Shtei Lechem. You'd have to wait. You have to use plant A before plant B. So that's the Gemara's Svara. That's the Gemara's Svara of it must be Shleika Sidron doesn't work. Says the Gemara. Vim Isa, 3 lines up. The Shtei Lechem Shleika Sidron Sharia, that Shleika Sidron is muta. Mishkachas la, you'll find a scenario where both bikurim wheat can be bought by the Omer and wheat can be bought by the Shtei Lechem. The makar of Omer mehanech the asher's koydem Shtei Lechem. You'll go be makar for the Omer plant A. Ubasa Omer de shtakid, and after the Omer of the next year, Shtei Lechem mehanech the asher's koydem Omer the hashta. Ubasa Shtei Lechem de shtakid, and you'll bring plant B. Says the Gemara, mi savris, do you really hold bikurim lepira kaminan? When it says bikurim, it doesn't mean bikurim of the peri. It means bikurim amirun lemizbeach kaminan. Ve'achol lemizbeach mipiri dehashasa. In other words, if you're going to go, I don't care. I don't care. You're telling me that this is bikurim of the year, plant B has no shaykhs to the Omer of that year, but rather the Shtei Lechem of the previous year, of this year, and it's bikurim for that. I only care what goes on the Mizbeach first. The Omer is always going to come before the Shtei Lechem. And if you say the Omer comes what? From wheat, it's not going to be bikurim. I need bikurim that the Shtei Lechem is the first wheat on the Mizbeach. If you're going to bring the Omer from wheat, I don't care which wheat it was, what plant A, plant B, if that's going to be used on the Mizbeach, then you can't. Okay, that's the Gemara's Shleika Sidron. The Gemara is not Paisha the Shaila, and therefore we'll go weiter. Boy Romi Rachama. Shtei Alechem Hanatza. Now there's two points in time. Hanatza and Chanata. Chanata and Hanatza. So the Gemara wants to know the following. Le'inyan being matir. Shtei Alechem Hanatza Sharia. Boy Ram Chama, Shtei Alechem, Hanatza Sharia or Chanata Sharia? What matters the Shtei Lechem? Is it Hanatza, which is an earlier time, or Chanata? Now the Gemara wants to know, my Chanata or my Chanata? What do you mean Hanatza or my Chanata? Ilay ma Hanatza the Peri, V'chanta the Peri. It's at 2 periods of time. Chanata is an earlier time, and Chanata is a later time. Hashda Shrosha Sharia, Hanatza v'Chanata mi boy. What matters it? In other words, at which point in time do we go ahead and view it as part, whether it's when it took root? If it took root before the Omer, or it took root after the Omer. So what do you care about the Chanata or which is later? We go after the root. So if we have, guys, Chanata and Chanata and Hanatza are second and third base. If you're at first base, Mamela, you know second and third base, right? That Shrosh is first base. So what's the Shaila? Says the Gemara, no. Chanata miboy ella hanatza de ola the chanata de ola mihavi kiashrasha oilai. What does the Gemara want to know? The Gemara wants to know the Inyan Bikurim. The Inyan Bikurim, why do you go after? Do you go after the hanatza of it, of the leaf growing, or the chanata? Says Rashi, miyavi hanatza de ola beperis ha'ilon ki hashrasha titfua oilai. Like just like we go after Hashrasha, and therefore, fellas, if the Shirish takes place before point A, then the Omer matters it. If it takes place before point B, the oimer doesn't matter. It after the oimer. You have fruit. Do you go after the earlier stage or the later stage? Le'inyan, the shtei lechem mattering the fruit, guys. Do we go after the chanata or do we go after the hashrat? Do we go after the? So no, we're talking about a tree, guys. You're talking about a tree. We're going to see later on that the shtei lechem matter is the fruit. At which point in time is the shtei lechem matter the fruit? B'shas the hanatza, the earlier time, or the chanata, the later time? That's what we want to know. And the Gemara says teku. Boy, Rabbi Baruch Chana, chitin shezorin bekarka. You planted chitim in the ground. Oimim matirin or ein oimim matirin. Now the Gemara wants to know the following. What are you talking about? Hekidami. Eid the ashrish. If you're telling me it took root, Tanina, you know the answer. Eid lo yashrish. If it didn't take root, Tanina, you know the answer. Ditnan. Imeshrishu koidim lo oimer oimim matirin. Vimla vasurim achiyavo oimer haba. So everything goes yes to the taking root. If it took root before the oimer matis. If it didn't, it's the next year's oimer. So what's your shaila? Lam de shayla. Leitzricha de chatzinu. It took place. Look, guys, it took place before the oimer, and you harvested it, and then v'zarina you replanted it. Koidim la'oimer. So really, it took root before the oimer. You harvested before the oimer. Had you let it out, the oimer would have matted it. But what did you do? You replanted it. So watch the shayla. V'chalaf alayu, when the oimer passed by. V'asa oimer v'chalaf alayu. V'komi boile, mahu lintgat umechel minahu. Can you go open it up and eat it? Do we say kiman d'shadya b'kada damya v'sharinon? Do we view it in the ground as if it was in a kli? And just like if it was in a kli, it would be mutter because it took root and you harvested before the oimer matters it. It's in the ground, I'll view it like it's in a vessel, and there it's mutter. Dilma batal hulagabeyara, and we'll view it as the ground. In other words, alam shayla. How do you view replanted seeds? Do you view them as metaltalin, or do you view them as karka? If you view them as metaltalin, it'll be mutter. If you view them as batal to the karka, it will be asa. Now, if that's the case, I have the shayla by two other venues. We know from Perek HaZohav the concept of Ainah. Ainah is if you overcharge more than a sixth, the deal is off. If you overcharge less than a sixth, the deal is on, people are mevata. If it's exactly the sixth, then the deal is on, and you return the Ainah. Now we know there's no din of Ainah by karka. So let's say the guy would sell the seeds in the ground. If you view them as seeds separately, it's a good deal. There's no din of Ainah. There's a din of Ainah. If you view it as karka, then there's no din of Ainah. A second idea is the katsa of nishboyin. The shuas deraisa, the shuas mother mitzvah, shuas eda, shuas eidachot, which is it's not shaykh to karka. If could you swear on these seeds? If it's karka, you can't. If it's seeds, you could. Okay, that's the Gemara's format that we're going to go through. Okay, so we asked the shayla the Inyan Oimer, and yesh lehem Oino, ein lehem Oino. Hekidami ilay medama lahu shadai by shisa. You know, you bought a certain amount. You said it was 6. V'yasa sadi v'amad lo shada be'ela chamisha, and they only said 5. So you want to know if there's a din of Oino? 1 second. V'amar kol davar shebemido shemishkol sheminyan afilu pachas michdei Oino chayzer. Even less than a sixth is the din is off. Why? Anything that you can qualify, guys, a person's not going to go ahead and be Michael. Since it's davar mida mishkol sheminyan, you can qualify it by counting it, by weighing it, right? So therefore, if you're talking about 6 versus 5, that's a davar sheminyan. So that can't be the shaila. Ella damalei shadai boy kidiboyla. He said they made a deal. You're going to plant, and whatever you plant, what's necessary for this piece of ground, you're going to plant. But he didn't give a number to it. He didn't plant amount. So once you didn't give a davar sheminyan, now it's a shailach. Do you view the seeds as seeds and there is a din of Ainah, or do you view it as the ground and there's no din of Ainah? Yesh nam Ainah, the command is shadya b'kada damya, and therefore it's metaltalin. V'yesh nam Ainah, idil mabatul l'gabi ara. Third case. Nishboyin aleim, ein nishboyin aleim. Is there a din of shvuah? Ein nishboyin ala karkois. Right. Kiddushadi b'kadadamya u'metaltlin dami v'nishbayin aleim. Is it confused as you put it in a kli and it's possible to swear? Or dilma batal hu agav arka. It's batal u'kemakarki dami v'nishbayin aleim. What does the Gemara answer? Teku tishbi yitaretz kushas rabayis. Okay, so guys, we went. If you go back to the Siman, we did Seder. That was the Shleika Seder. We did Hanatza, right? That's right. And now we're up to Gali. We're up to Gali. Okay. Boy Ramachama. Chitin shebeglole bakar. Chitin that's in the excrement of cattle. Usairin shebeglole behema. Or soirin that's in the excrement of behema. Mahu. Now one was lamai. What halacha is your shaila? Ilaim letmuye tumasaichlin. Is if it's considered food or not to be mitama tumasaichlin? Tanina. Chitin sheb berei bakar. Chitin that's in the excrement of bakar. Usoirin sheb begolia behema. Chishev aleihem. It's very interesting, fellas. Just to make a diak, I've just thought about it. Difference between bakar and behema. For baka, you're going to feed them chitim. It's a finer thing. By behema, you're going to feed them sa'irim. Sa'irim is considered, it's considered animal fodder. So you see that it's interesting. It switches from baka to behema, right? It's a little nuance. Anyway, not that they were cattle people. Anyway. If you think about, right, if you think about them, for achila, they're not metama. Locked on achila, but if you did a maisa, you gather them metame tumas eichlin. So therefore, there's not a shaila. It depends upon whether you did an action or not. So that can't be Rami Barcham shaila. What must a shaila be? No menachos. Can you use these grain for menachos? Can you use the sayrin for menachos? Now pshita, that's also pashit. Deloy that you can't. Hakriveu no lepechasecha hayirtzecha hayisa panecha. Guys, we always bring this pasuk from Micha, right? But bring it to your governors. If you be a lousy carbon, Hashem doesn't want lousy carbonas. What are you going to bring? This is disgusting. You're going to bring this to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? So that's also pashut that you can't. But like tzricha, dinaktinu, you took it, vizarinu, and you went ahead and planted it. V'kaboi lasui menachos minayu, and you want to bring menachos from it. So in other words, how do you take it directly from the excrement? As then it would be hakriv no pechasecha, but you didn't do that. You planted it first. So what's your shaila? Minaya, my mishum demi susahu. To take it directly is a mius. The kivin de zarinu ozal misayu. Once you planted it, the miskite, right? The miskite went away. The disgust went away. Aydilma mishum kichishusa hu. The reason why is because it got weakened. It went through the track of an animal, and the nutrients were taken out. V'hashtanami kichusha. In other words, what's the reason you can't use it? Is it disgusting or it's shvach? So if it's as disgusting, if you put it in the ground, it loses its disgust. If it's as shvach, it's still shvach. Therefore, you can't. And the Gemara answers teku. That's the shaila of what? Of gully. The next shaila is pill. The last and final shaila is elephant. Okay, get ready for this one. Guys, I want you to touch this Gemara, what it seemed to me, because I had a guy who came to my house today who touched the Gemara. I thought it was so funny. He said to me, Rabbi, did you see this Gemara today? And how do you touch this Gemara? Pill, shebola kfifus mitzris. An elephant, it swallowed a wicker basket of Egyptian wicker basket. The Ikea, and it came out, derech beisarei. It came out, it went, it went through the digestive tract of the elephant, and it came out whole. Mahu. Lamai. Ilaim lemavatel tumasa. If you're going to say to mevatel, it's tuma. Tanina. Kol hakelim yordim le tumasa machshava. Vein olim tumasa el b'shina maisa. So hey, this guys, this is not a shina maisa. It would still be tamei. Here's the Gemara that I thought funny. Like tzricha dibola hutzin. It swallowed. Hutzin are the wickers, guys. It swallowed wickers. Ve'avdinu kfifa mitzvahs. Now, how did you learn pshat in that? Did you learn that way? Did you learn that way? The guy in my house said to me, it went through the digestive tract of the elephant, it went in a hutzin and it came out a basket. That's the way he learned. I said, that's not the pshat. That's not the. But can you learn? You could see a person making that mistake, right? It flowed like that. Here's what happened, guys. It went through the digestive tract. and when it came out, the person then made a basket. The person then made a basket. Now, what's the shaila? What's the status of this hutzin? Once it goes, when it goes in, zicha, if before it went in, it was shaykh to makabel tuma. But now it went through the track. Mi havi equal, do we view it as digested? Havi le'amid beis, kikli galalim, kikli adama. If you're going to view it, what? As equal, as digested already, then we'll view it, what, guys, as kli adama. We'll view it as what? As galalim, which is not makabel tuma. They makabel tuma. Dama mar, kli avonim, kli galalim, kli adama, ein makabel tuma. Loy midrei Torah, loy midrei seifrim. Like dilma loy havi yikol, or maybe it's not considered digested. Went through, and therefore it will be makabel tuma. That's the lamda shashayla. Because the lamda shashayla. How do you view this wicca before and after? Before it zicha, if you put it together, it will be makabel tuma. But do we view it as digested, and therefore we view it as galalim? If it's galalim, it's not makabel tuma. Loy midrei Torah, loy midrei seifrim. So we want to know that. Now the Gemara attempts to give a tifshel lamiha. Let's be poishit from the following. The Ama Ula Mishum Reb Shimon Bar Yoed Tzadik, Maisa, there was a Maisa. Ubala Ze'evim Shnei Tinoikis Le'olenu, the wolves devoured two children whole, Be'eva Yardain, Uba Maisa Lefnei Chachamim, after what the children had come through the digestive tract. Now the question is it din of a Maisa or not, and Mekabel Tomo or not? V'tiaru. So what do you see? Once it went through the digestive tract, it no longer is considered what? A viable person. Who adin the hutzah, once it went through the digestive tract of the elephant, should not be considered a hutzah. It should be considered glalim. Just like the child is considered different, it's no longer makabel tuma. So to the hutzah also should be makabel tuma. It should be considered equal. The Gemara answers, v'tiras basa, shiny basa, the rachif. Bus is different. Hutzah is something very, very hard. It's a thorn. It goes in, it comes out. You can see it's the same thing. Mashen came basa, which is something that's shaykh to be digested by the wolf. Memela, that's why the matar. Fred Gemara v'lishid miseifa v'tihamu es at samas. They said the at samas was still tamei. So let's be poishid. Then the hutzin are also tamei. The hutzin are also tamei. Says Gemara shiny at samas. They're kushet tvei. They're harder. In other words, the hutzim seems to be in the middle madrega. Right, basa for sure is considered equal. Atzamas for sure is not considered equal. Hutzin, we're not sure. Is it like basa and it's not, or it's like hutzim and it is? Excuse me, like hutzim, like basa and it's considered equal, or atzamas and it's not considered equal, and therefore the Gemara does not answer the kasha. It answers another question. Okay, interesting Gemara. boy, Reb Zera, chitin she yordu ba'avim. Chitin that came down from the clouds. See Rashi, guys. Third line down. Sheyardu ba'avim imamatar. It came down with the rain. Kishashasu avim bukyanos. When the clouds went ahead and condensed, they took up the condensation from the oceans. Bolu svina malaya chitin. It swallowed up a boat full of chitin, and now it came down. Probably in the Bermuda Triangle, I would think, right? So it went up there, and it was, and that's what's coming down now.
Wouldn't that be like a tornado?
Yeah, there are things called water spouts.
Could be. Anyway, let's see Taisvis. Chitin sheyardu ba'avim, pirish b'kuntris, sheshasu b'kyanos, u'balus svina malaya chitin, v'kashla revenu tam. De'imi chutz la'aretz, chutru l'shtei alechem, b'shvil shahaya ba'avim. No, if it was swallowed up in chutz la'aretz, and it comes down in Eretz Yisrael, doesn't help us. You need mimosh v'seichem. You need the grain to come with v'seichem. So what does it help that it was swallowed up? What's your shaila? It's, in other words, bottom line is you need from Eretz Yisrael, you need grain from Eretz Yisrael. So this is the shaila of the shtei lechem. So what's the story? We want to know. Menachos is not a problem. I stopped short. The Gemara says shtei lechem. V'i me Eretz Yisrael v'chi nesrin heim al yidei kach. And from Eretz Yisrael, why should it be asa? Manav shach, fellas. If it was viable, Tosfos' Kashan Rashi is like this: going through the clouds should not be a criteria for deciding whether it's good for the shtei lechem or not. If the produce was from Eretz Yisrael, why shouldn't it be good? And if it was some chutzlaritz, it's no way it should be good. Frek Toises on Rashi, whatever happened to the ship, it shouldn't depend where it came from the cloud. It should depend upon where its source was from the beginning. Asay Frek Toises. And because it is kasha, Toises is going to give it different teretz. Says the Gemara, El Kach Near says Toises, Al Yidei Nes Yardu Ba'avim. It came down Al Yidei Nes. Ki Hanu Atma'asa, the Perik Dal Misai, speaking there about some meat that came down. Okay, anyway, that's the Toises says it's a Nes. B'Koira, can you go ahead and do a mitzvah with a Nes? You had the Shaila by what? By Chanukah, right? How can you be nena from the oil? Are they nes? You mean nena from a nes? Anyway, so if this is a nes, how could you have enough from it? This is Torah. Bottom line is machlekes Rashi and Tosfos. So Nageya us, it went up, it came down, and we want to know. Says the Gemara. Ila menachos amai loy, menachos why not? Ela l'shtei lechem, mai. Mimosh v'seichem amrachmona lafuki dechutz laaretz, deloy. Aval the ovim shapidami. In other words, Mishra Sechem is Lafuki Chutzlaretz, but Ovim, which seems to be what? No man's land. In other words, when it says Mishra Sechem, is it Dafka Mishra Sechem as opposed to Chutzlaretz? Or it's Dafka Mishra Sechem as opposed to anything else? And that's the Shaila. The Briskerov points out that if it came down, it must have came down in Eretz Yisrael. He said if it came down, even though it's a nest, it had to come down in Eretz Yisrael. It couldn't come down in Chutzlaretz. So at least you needed to come down. At least if it's in Chutz Laaretz, then he seems to say that it wouldn't be a shaila, that it wouldn't be good to use for the shtei lechem. Okay, Fredgo Miyika Ki Gavna. Is it possible to have such a thing to go up in the sky? And so this is why it's mashma like Rashi, guys. This is why Rashi is more geschmack. Fred the Gemara, is it possible for it to come down in the clouds? What should the answer be? Al Yidei Nes. Doesn't say that. Kida Odi Taya Nachisile Roim Kizba Chite Betulsa Parsi. Like Adi the Arab, it fell for him the size of a tefach of chitim in 3 parsois. So it did happen to him. I think that's why Machriya Rashi is, why would this Arab be zeicha to this? So in other words, if what came up, what goes up must come down. I know that's going to make it in the blog. What goes up, already he's thinking that if that's the case, so Bishlam, if it's a nes, why would a nes happen to this guy, right? Okay, anyway, that's the shaila. Does the Gemara answer the shaila? No. Boy Rav Shimon ben Pazi, she boilus shehevia shlish koidim lo'omer. She boilus, you grew a stalk before it hit before it brought a shlish, which means it's considered an entity, right? For akra, you uprooted it, but this is before the oimer. In other words, right now this is considered chadash. That's roy to be mutter al yedei the oimer at this point in time. You were oiker it before v'shasla la'achar oimer, and you went ahead and planted it right after the oimer. For sifu. And now it went ahead and it grew something. So guys, what you planted, is it mutter? Yes. The hisafa happened afterwards. What's the halacha? Do you go after the root, which is mutter, or do you go after the hisafa? Mahu, basa ikaraz linon, do we go after the root, and therefore visharya oimer, and the oimer matter that already? Oidilma basa tesefas as linon. Vachiyova oimer, haba, and you won't be able to use it until the next Omer. Says the Gemara, Tifshalei mihadam Rav Avolam Rav Yochanan. Yolda, you have a yolda that has fruit on it, guys. Now this yolda means it's within the first 3 years of its existence, which is called arla, which is asa bahana. So you take it, has fruit on it. Shasafcha bizkena, and you grafted it onto a zakena, means a tree that's past 3 years. So you have a branch with arla fruit on it. You're putting it on a tree that what is a zakena, and therefore what it is, it's roy, you could eat it. Uba peris, and now peris grow. Afilu hoisif masayim, even if you have 200 more of its growth. Now, guys, arla is butter in 200. So let's say it's a 1, and now it's 201. So you see that the 200 of its growth was as a result of the zakena, of the non-arla tree. Guys, you hear? You put a orla fruit that's a 1 on a tree that's non-orla. Now we know the halachas of grafting, the nutrients do not come from the branch, the nutrients come from the old tree. And now you have the share of 200 versus 1. You're still going to say it's asa. So you see, you go after the ikka, you go after the beginning, you go after the root. Here. V'omer Rabbi Shmuel ben Achmeini, Omer Rabbi Yona's son, batzel, onion, shesaslu b'kerem, you planted it in a kerem, so now it becomes asad as clay kerem. V'nerka kerem, then you took the vineyard away, and now it grew. Afilu haisef Masayim, 200 asa. It's no share bittul by clay kerem. Clay kerem uses asa b'hana, but here is asa. Says that, so the chayra, you have the share vatal. So the chayra, why couldn't you be poishit? Now the difference over here is, guys, here we're being machmir. Guys, by both the case of Klei Kerem and Orlo, we're being machmir, saying it's usher. By the oimer, we want to matter it, right? That's a kula. That's a kula. We want to matter the top that grew. Yes. Says Gemara Hagufa Kasha. Here's the shaila. Hagufa Kami Boilu. Mifshat Pshitalhu Lirabonon the Basar Ikar as Linon. It's pasha to the Rabbanon, you always go after the root. Loishna Lakula by the Oimer, Loishna Lachumer by Orlon Keakerem. Aidilma Suki Masafkalahu, they Masupik. Ulachumra Amrinon, Lakula Loy Amrinon. Guys, you hear the shaila. Guys, you're asking a shaila by the Oimer. Do you go after the root and it's mutter, or do you don't you? Let's be placed that you go after the root, it's going to be us. It should be mutter. Why? Because by Arla, you go after the root to Aser. By Klei Kerem, you go after the root to Aser. So the Gemara says, why can't you be placed from there? Says, well, that's the shaila. Do we say you always go after the root? No difference l'chumra, no difference l'kula, or no? We're misupik. So therefore, b'klei kerem, which is the raisa, orla, which is the raisa, we were machmir, and therefore by the oimer, I don't know for sure, and that's the shaila. And the Gemara answers that teku. Says the Gemara, that's a teku.